This is the fence between my property and the road. And when I say the road, I mean that little bit of gravel over there. So it's not a motorway. This in Swedish is called gärdesgård. It's common in, I think, all of Scandinavia, in the Baltic countries, and also in USA, where it's called a roundpole fence. I built this last year. I got away quite lightly with this. Normally you have to start by going into the forest and cutting all of the poles. I didn't have to do that because somebody gave me a complete fence that they'd taken down. So I was really happy for that. The only downside to that was when it had been put together before, it was put together with nails. So I spent a whole afternoon and I pulled a whole bucket full of nails out of every one of those poles. If you build it properly, and I use the term properly very, very loosely, you're supposed to use pine shoots to bind it together. I haven't done that. I tried all sorts of different pine shoots and small pine saplings and bits of branch and everything, and I put them in water and tried to get them to soften up, and it just didn't work. They just split the whole time. So I have used this wire to bind everything together. Wire has been used to bind gärdesgård or roundpole fence in Scandinavia, in any case, for a couple of 100 years. And that was used when they couldn't get hold of the right sort of pine shoots to tie the whole thing together. So, following that tradition, I've done the same thing, because I couldn't get hold of anything else. So the time has come now to continue the fence on the other side of the gateposts. Partly because I want to have a little bit more fence there, and partly so I can move this pile of poles that's still lying here from when I built the first fence. I've got a string line there that you can't see, and we're going to build it as far as those bushes there. So that's about 6-7 meters, something like that. If you really want to try and build these in a straight line, you can get them to go a little bit round a corner, but it's not easy. And it's a lot easier if you've got reasonably flat ground. So I filled in a little bit of the ground there. There's a hole. I filled that in. So that's going to make my life easier. Hey cat! Yeah. I want 1 metre between the poles. I'm going to measure that out. I'm going to take this spet, stick it in the ground, make a hole, stick the poles in. the ends of these are burned, and that's supposed to help them last a little bit longer. There's a lot of discussion on whether it actually works, but it's the traditional way of doing it, so we're going to say that it works. And then I like to take a little spirit level and just get an idea if it's upright. The whole fence technically doesn't have to be upright, but it just has to look as though it's upright. Because if it looks like it's leaning all over the place, then that isn't good. The poles are in, if you can see them, there are a lot of sticky things there. So the next thing is we're going to start putting in the horizontal ones, something like that. But I want to have more or less the same angle as on the other side. I don't quite know how this is going to work out, because this side goes downhill. Well, the ground goes downhill. The other side is flat. But I thought what we could do then is take the bevel gauge and see what we've got for an angle. And the spirit level underneath, so that's something like this. Is not that precise. It's not supposed to be that precise either. It's just so everything looks right. I think we want something like that. We're going to try and get the same level of slopiness, if you will, on the other side. I think it's a better way of explaining that. So I think that's where we want it. It's my little plan of measuring it out with a bevel gauge and a spirit level didn't really work, and I think that's because on the right side the ground slopes downhill, and on the left side it's pretty level. So I'm just going to go by eye. The only reason I'm trying to get this right is that I just don't want it to look silly. If it's right, you shouldn't notice it. It should just look like it's always been there, and it should just melt in. So I think we're going to go with that. I'm going to put a couple more horizontal, or not really horizontal. I don't know any of the terminology in English for this fence. Anyway, these leaning posts, I'm going to put a couple more of those in, and then take a few steps back and see how everything looks. And if it looks right, I'm going to carry on. If it doesn't look right, I'm going to take them down and start again. Because it's now that I have a chance to get it right. I don't want to build the whole thing and think, yeah, wish I'd done it differently. I don't have a whole lot of wire left. I'll have to go and get some more, maybe tomorrow. This is what I'm using for wire. This is what you tie together rebar with. It's pretty flexible, it's strong, and it looks okay. It's got a sort of a coppery colour to it. Some wire you get, it's, you know, bright silver. I don't think that looks so good. Just thinking about what I'm going to do up to the gate post here. Well, I know what I'm going to do, thinking about how I'm going to do it. I'm going to do what I did here. And I've taken the poles and just laid them down. So they're angled more and more and more till you get to the bottom. I don't know how you're supposed to finish a gärdesgård. You know, get to the end and what do you do? Because you've got poles that stick out. But that's what I came up with. And then this is what I did in the other end. Obviously they're going the other way here, so I just angled them up like so. I did that at the end here just to finish it off. Everything melts into these bushes here, so should see. You shouldn't notice it when it's all green here. So there we go, I'm really happy with that. Took maybe 5 or 6 hours. It was a little bit more difficult here because this is an old house foundation. That house, not that house, that's the workshop. That house up there, that's my house, that's where I live. And it used to be here. So you can see this big pile of stones that are cemented together. That's where the chimney was. And the back wall was up there, just in front of the boat. The boat's another project. And this other foundation thing here, I don't really know what part of the house that was. It looks like it should have been a cellar, like a root cellar, but it isn't. So, but that was part of the house as well. So I had, in the end, for these last 2 posts here, I had to dig a great big hole in the ground and pull out all of these bits of stone and bits of brick and everything like that, and fill it up with soil again, pack it all down, and then stick the posts in. So it's a lot easier if you're not building a fence on an old house foundation, which normally isn't the case, but it was the case here. This is what I do then to bind everything together. Get you a roll of wire, straighten a bit out on the end, stick it through, bend it round, bring it back, and then over and round this piece. Pull on it with the pliers, make sure it's tight, make sure everything's sitting where it wants to be sitting, and then wind it together, cut the roll off because that's just in the way, and then just twist that together. Not too hard because it'll break, but hard enough so everything's nice and secure. Cut the end off and push that end down so you don't get caught on it when you walk past the fence. Heeled ordinary, rather old pair of pliers with built-in side cutters. That's all you need.